from Washington, D.C., here is Paul Walker. And in the red corner, he's undefeated as a professional. 17 wins, 10 by knockout. He weighed in at 138 3/4 pounds. From Columbus, Ohio, they call him Cold Blood, Mike Clark.
The tape for tonight's bout, Mike Clark out of Columbus, Ohio, obviously the younger fighter than Lyndon Paul Walker, and you see he has a 3-inch reach advantage. Here are the rules as governed by the state of Michigan. Standing 8 count is in effect, 3 knockdown rule in effect. Fighter can be saved by the bell only in the final round, and only the referee can stop the fight. This bout is scheduled for 10 rounds in the lightweight division. Clark fighting out of the Kronk Gym with Emmanuel Stewart in his corner as we look over the shoulder of Lyndon Paul Walker. Walker trying to get to the 500 mark professionally at 11, 12, and 5. Round number 1 underway. Al, what do you look for early?
Well, Lyndon Walker is a boxer we've seen here on ESPN before. He was a very fine amateur, as of course was Mike Clark, but his professional career has been more of a struggle, obviously. As you said, he's trying to get back to the 500 mark. He has fought just about every good young lightweight or junior welterweight coming down the pike, has most often lost, but has always acquitted himself well. We saw him against Ivan Robinson do very well and hang in there for 10 rounds. And interestingly, Ivan Robinson is the man that eliminated Mike Clark in the quarterfinals of the Olympic trials in 1992.
Clark with 10 knockouts in his 17 professional wins. If he's going to get you, it will probably be early. He has 3 first-round knockouts and 3 second-round knockouts. But I don't think you'd classify him as a big puncher.
Not a huge puncher. He's really more of a boxer-puncher type. And Lyndon Walker, not the kind of guy that is easy to get out of there. He went the distance with Ray Oliveira, we saw in his last bout, who was the former WBO junior welterweight champ. Went the distance with Ivan Robinson, as we saw, also with Reggie Green. So he can go some ways with some pretty good boxers.
He's only been knocked out twice as Lyndon Paul Walker slips there. Midway point of round number 1, scheduled for 10. These are lightweights, Clark and Walker.
Also look for Walker to switch to lefty as the bout goes on. That is something he almost always does.
But I guess against a veteran like Walker, it probably will not cause that much of a problem. Good left hand from Clark.
Mike Clark told us that he is a little disappointed that he hasn't gotten to the level of some of the other top lightweights when he was boxing. Like there goes Walker down from a slip. Like Ivan Robinson, also Julian Wheeler, who we saw in the Olympics, who ended up eliminating Ivan Robinson. So he feels like even as an undefeated boxer, he's ready to take that next step up.
Walker a little awkward with his footwork. Final 20 seconds of round number 1. Pretty good round from Mike Clark, the 22-year-old out of Columbus, Ohio. This one is scheduled for 10 in the lightweight division. Clark and Walker. That's the 3rd time he slipped. Very awkward kind of footwork that Walker has.
He's always been that way, even in the amateurs. Not an easy man to box against, that, which explains why he's gone the distance with many top lightweights and junior welterweights, and has given a lot of them some trouble along the way. Mike Clark is a very classy boxer. He's got all the basic skills, was terrific as an amateur, as I mentioned, and of course he's benefited from the tutelage of Emmanuel Stewart as a pro. economical with his punches, throws them all correctly, and it's really just a matter of him stepping up and testing himself against better competition.
Would you term this fight a little bit better competition?
A smidge, in the sense that Walker is a guy you can judge yourself against. I mentioned all those other people. For instance, Robinson didn't handle Walker that easily. So if Mike Clark can do it, it may give him some indication. So far, he is being very accurate, Mike Clark, with his punches here in this round.
He's had some success with a lead right hand as well. Right there.
And all that came because of the work with the jab earlier. You see how tough, though, Walker is. You need to be a big puncher. The only two people who have knocked him out, Sharmba Mitchell and Lamar Murphy. Murphy, of course, who fought unsuccessfully, but just barely twice for world titles.
Final 45 seconds of round number 2 from the Palace at Auburn Hills.
I think a cut has emerged around the right eye of Lyndon Paul Walker.
And Clark very effective with his left hand as well as his right. Even swelling under the left eye of Walker. So far, a very accurate performance by Mike Clark.
Well, you can see why he was an amateur champion and why he's undefeated as a pro.
Mike Clark and Lyndon Paul Walker from the Palace at Auburn Hills, scheduled for 10 on the Deuce. In round number 3 of the scheduled 10-round lightweight bout between Mike Clark and Lyndon Paul Walker. And so far, a very good performance through the first 2 rounds by Mike Clark, 17-0 with 10 knockouts.
Walker going downstairs. I'm shocked that Walker hasn't switched to lefty yet. He does it so often in his bouts. You see, he's always attacking, though. He's throws a lot of wide looping punches, but he's always coming forward. Demonstration of the edge that Mike Clark has in his bout, and 50%, of course, a terrific percentage to be landing. Walker is 2-8 in his last 10 fights, and you might say, boy, that's really terrible. But here's some of the guys he fought: Reggie Green, Ivan Robinson, Charles Murray, Sharmba Mitchell, Lamar Murphy, and Ray Oliveira. In that group, there are two world champions and a couple of guys that have fought for world titles. So when you're a journeyman like this, and you are the guy that's always brought in to see how good the young fighter is, you never have an easy fight.
So far, Mike Clark has done a pretty good job of doing what needs to be done. Don't forget our main event, Mark Whelan's second fight of his comeback. He takes on the veteran Buck Smith. That's our main event tonight on the Deuce.
It's been a long time since we had Buck here on ESPN. He's always been entertaining, and we're looking forward to seeing him again. As Mark Whelan, one of the good guys in boxing.
And Walker trying to rough up Clark a little bit. Good double left from Clark. Approaching 1 minute to go in round 3. Al, to this point, you impressed with what you've seen from Clark?
Mike Clark has had a very measured performance, and the way some of the boxers get in trouble against Walker is when they mix it up with him, because he's tough and he can throw punches. I like the fact that Mike Clark has not done that. He's been a little bit cautious, but very accurate with his punches.
Approaching 30 seconds to go in round number 3. Mike Clark looking for his 18th consecutive win in his pro career. There's a chopping right from Walker. But Al, as you pointed out, Clark has done a good job of staying away, using his jab. That lead right hand has worked as well. Closing seconds of round 3, scheduled for 10 in the lightweight division.
And that is in round 3, and you see the edge, and you see Walker pretty active with 61 punches, but good defense by Clark. And when you're landing up to 56%, you're doing a good job.
Little left by Clark, backed up Walker. Walker trying to turn this into a brawl. As you mentioned, Al, it'll get rough with Lyndon Paul Walker, and that's what he's trying to do here in round 4.
He would like to lure Clark into that. He did that to a certain extent with Ivan Robinson, who is also more of a classic boxer like Clark.
A couple elbows on the way in, make it a real brawl. Not advocating that.
Well, for Walker, though, it's a good strategy. Minus the elbows, I guess. Clark is pointing toward a match with perhaps somebody like Rafael Ruelas he'd like to get to, former champion. He'd love to fight Robinson. He'd also like to fight Julian Wheeler, who is a professional also and has done pretty well as a pro, who represented the United States at the 1992 Olympics. And based upon what we see here tonight, you can tell Mike Clark is ready to do that.
I haven't really sensed any frustration from Clark. And when you have a calming influence like Emmanuel Stewart in your corner, I guess it makes it a little bit easier.
He's gone about his business, has landed the things that were available to him, primarily the jab and the straight right hand, and probably knew coming in that it wouldn't be easy to get Walker out of there.
Referee is Dan Kelly. Just warns Walker about hitting to the back of the head on the clinch.
We've talked a lot about Clark. Lyndon Walker also was a very fine amateur, and like Clark was a champion at the Olympic Festival. And in both cases, we broadcast their win on ESPN.
Good left and right from Clark. Come to the end of round number 10. Looks like Mike Clark out of Columbus, Ohio, to this point is pitching a shutout. More after this. Welcome back to the Palace at Auburn Hills. Bob Papa along with Al Bernstein. We start round number 5 of the scheduled 10-round lightweight bout between Mike Clark out of Columbus, Ohio, 17-0 with 10 knockouts, and Lyndon Paul Walker, the 30-year-old out of Washington, D.C. at 11-12-5. Al, you have some numbers for us?
Well, as you take a look at the numbers that CompuBox give us, Clark landing over 50% of his punches and being a little bit more active than Lyndon Walker, and an indication there of just how precise Mike Clark has been with his punches.
Good to see Bob Canobio and Logan Hobson working about an equal amount in this bout.
That neither one can complain because each man is throwing exactly just about the same amount of punches.
Here's what Walker would like to do is get Clark against the ropes and rough him up a little bit, being cautioned about the head.
You know, the temptation, and you mentioned it earlier, is for a boxer like Mike Clark, a youngster who is undefeated, to be frustrated. There for a moment, Walker switched to lefty. I'm shocked he hasn't done it to this point, but there would be the temptation for Clark to be a little frustrated because he can't hurt or knock down Walker, but he has not been. He has gone about his business in a workmanlike way.
There's a right hand from Clark. And Clark has done a good job when Walker gets in tight like this. He's tying him up so that he can't get too rough.
And that's the place in which Walker could do some damage with those short chopping punches. Mike Clark has really found a home for the lead right hand against Walker. He hasn't landed it perfectly, or he might have knocked him down. He's kind of cuffing with that punch a little bit. Emmanuel Stewart told him between rounds, told Mike Clark, don't get off that jab. Keep using it no matter what you do.
Clark will give you some punches from different angles.
Yeah, he's mixed in the left hook a little bit and some uppercuts, so it's not a one-dimensional attack with a jab and a straight right hand. And there they were.
On cue.
Perfect. He must have hurt us.
Would not be the first time fighters listen to your advice midstream. Final 15 seconds of round number 5. These fighters in the lightweight division. Mike Clark, promising young prospect out of Columbus, against the veteran Lyndon Paul Walker. We're at the midway point here on the Deuce. And Mike Clark has been perfect through 5 rounds, Al, hasn't he?
He has indeed. You really can't criticize any level of his performance because he's been patient. He has landed very good punches, avoided being hit, and is landing at over 50%. And the big staple of his attack has been the jabs, and look at that edge. And then mixing in the right hands like he threw just a moment ago, you see why Clark has been so impressive. Oh, he's got Walker hurt.
Clark letting his hands go. Walker keeps coming at him. There's another right hand. Clark staying right there, trying to swing his way through it.
Well, you are now getting evidence why Lyndon Walker is so hard for these really good lightweights and junior welterweights to knock out. Takes tremendous punishment, keeps coming, and keeps throwing punches.
Clark has never recorded a knockout in round 6.
He has landed some tremendous straight rights, and in this round, the right hands have not been cuffing or wide. They've been very straight and very powerful. I like that one.
Now, we've talked about how Clark has remained patient in the first 5 rounds. After a flurry like that and still having Walker right in front of him, could he get frustrated now?
It's conceivable because now in this round, he hasn't just landed good shots. He's landed probably the best power punches he has. And we saw evidence when Robinson fought Walker that he got a little frustrated and got lured into a little bit of a slugging match. That's what Clark wants to avoid here. I love the angles that Mike Clark gives you. He is fighting this kind of opponent really perfectly.
I would think we will see more of Mike Clark in the future.
I think he's ready to step up and face a top lightweight. I certainly would love to see him in a match against Robinson or Julian Wheeler or Rafael Ruelas. They mentioned him, the former champion. I think that would be a terrific match.
There's another right hand. And now you see that's all set up from the jab we saw earlier.
He has used that punch so well that it really creates an opening for that lead right. This might be the best of what has been 6 very good rounds for Mike Clark.
Still has 4 more to go. Final 10 seconds of round number 6. A lot of bombs from Mike Clark, but Lyndon Paul Walker is still right there. Mike Clark comes out of his corner to begin round number 7 against Lyndon Paul Walker, and he comes out bombing away as he did to start round number 6. It has been all Mike Clark from the opening bell.
It's a very big ring, and that's helping Clark in his endeavors because he wants to move and give a lot of angles to Walker, and he's been able to do that effectively.
Good round 6 for Mike Clark, Al. Let's take a look at the numbers.
Spectacular, and the punch profile numbers show us that 81%, that's fairly good. You'll usually be winning around when you land 81% of your punches.
He won it convincingly.
Yeah, that's for sure. And Walker took some huge shots in that round, too. I mean, those were good power shots.
You know, you can almost make an argument that that could be a 10-8 round without a knockdown.
And that's the kind of round that some commissions have urged their judges to make 10-8 rounds. Traditionally in boxing, of course, if you don't get a knockdown, it's not often a 10-8 round. Usually it's 10-9.
Do you subscribe to that theory?
I normally score that way. I don't usually give 10-8 rounds without a knockdown. It feels like that's the thing that will push you over the top. But I can see the other side of that equation as well. And if it's done consistently, I think that's okay. But it usually isn't consistent.
I, on the other
How about
hand,
that?
do not mind it.
I can get a job at the UN with the answer I just gave you. Do you realize that?
I like a 10-8 without a knockdown. I even like a 10-7. Well, a guy who has scored some knockouts in his career, Mark Freeland, continues his comeback. He takes on Buck Smith with 180 career wins. He fights every other week. That's in our main event here on The Deuce. And don't forget, we'll take a look at Philip Holliday and Jeff Fennick in the IBF Lightweight Championship that took place in Melbourne, Australia this weekend. We will bring you the action.
As we span the globe to bring you... No, that was a different show.
Well, we've spanned the Detroit metro area without ever hitting Detroit.
We've managed to drive all around Detroit without actually going into the city.
We're in Monroe, Michigan on Friday night. Bronco McCart lost his WBO Junior Middleweight Championship to Winky Wright in a split decision in front of 6,000 of McCart's closest friends in his hometown.
That was a very difficult scene because both those young men, really quality guys, good boxers, and Bronco McCart, a very disappointing situation for him to lose in front of his hometown, but he'll be back. He's a good boxer.
Meanwhile, Mike Clark continues to dominate Lyndon Paul Walker with excellent boxing as we come to the end of round 7, scheduled for 10.
I'm Jim.
We are set for the start of round number 8. Mike Clark up and at him against Lyndon Paul Walker. And Al, I guess it's fair to say your scorecard would have a shutout for Mike Clark.
Mike Clark has won every single round. There's just none that have been even close. Well, there's Clark switching. It's interesting. That was an interesting move. Walker, who always switches, hasn't switched once in this bout, and there was Mike Clark switching to lefty momentarily.
Let's take a look at the numbers through round 7.
A huge edge for Mike Clark, and still landing at something like 60%, which is, I'm sure, among the top 10 highest we've had.
It's more than 3-1.
If he can sustain that over the course of the next couple of rounds. Those right hands that he's landing against Walker, excellent punches.
Oh, that was another one. But how about Lyndon Paul Walker? I mean, he's still right there.
He has always been this way, and it's a tough way to make a living when you're always in against a young Turk and you got to take these kind of punches, but he's able to do it, and amazingly, he just never seen, very seldom, he's only been knocked out twice in his career. He hangs in there, and of course his style lends itself to that because he comes in pretty much wide open.
Tough way to Lyndon Paul Walker to celebrate a birthday, which he had yesterday. Come into the ring tonight and get pounded for 7.5 rounds.
Turned 30, and we wish him a happy birthday. We hope the next week or so he can celebrate in a little better fashion.
A little showboating from Mike Clark. Approaching 1 minute to go in round number 8.
And as you look at Mike Clark, of course, part of the reason, for instance, why he's landing 60% is Walker is not the greatest defensive fighter that ever lived, and he does come in a pretty open fashion, but still it's a good performance by Clark, and you start to imagine him in against some of the other lightweights of note. I mentioned Robinson and Wheeler and Rafael Ruelas. There are others, of course, and I guess you start to think, what could he do against those people? Good right again by Clark, and really we don't know, do we? Because he's at the stage where he has to take that step up. One thing is for sure, he has the kind of skills it'll take to go with them.
Approaching 20 seconds to go in round number 8, scheduled for 10. Mike Clark out of Columbus, Ohio, 17-0. Looks like he's well on his way to 18-0. Still 2 more rounds for Mike Clark to finish up his business against Lyndon Paul Walker on the Deuce. Auburn Hills, round number 9 underway. Mike Clark and Lyndon Paul Walker scheduled for 10. These are lightweights, and Mike Clark, at least according to our eyes, has pitched a shutout through the first 8 rounds.
He has been completely dominant, and the only thing he has not gotten is a knockdown of Walker.
Would you say Mike Clark has been tested?
Only in the sense that we know that Walker is a tough guy to get out of there, and that from time to time, as I mentioned, against the Robinsons, a little bit against Oliveira, he had his moments.
Well, don't forget, coming up in our main event, Mark Breland. He won an Olympic gold medal in 1984, two-time world champion, fighting again.
And what must be going through his mind now at the age of 33 as he gets ready to step in the ring for only the second time in 5 years.
Says he's doing it for himself now. No more pressure. He's gone through all of that. He says he was just sparring in L.A., working out, and he decided, I think I'll box.
As we mentioned, he has drawn a pretty tough opponent in Buck Smith, so it'll be interesting. I would mention, as we look at this bout, this is a very big ring, and that's a big plus for Mark Breland, who may use more of the ring, just as Mike Clark is using it. Of course, Breland also a Kronk fighter, and this is in Detroit. That may have some bearing on this ring being so big.
Oh, what a right hand by Clark.
He's just teeing off on Walker, and Lyndon Paul Walker is going nowhere.
He's even coming forward.
He is amazing.
Again, a right hand.
And there is no question, Mike Clark is not a one-punch knockout artist, but still he's got some pop in his punches, and even though he hasn't fought killers, he still has 10 KOs.
Again with the right hand. Short left inside, another right hand.
Mike Clark can land the lead right almost whenever he feels like it. Swelling around the left eye and the right eye of Walker. They've done a very good job with the swelling around his eyes in his corner.
Tough way to make a buck for Lyndon Paul Walker.
I think now Walker's slowing down a bit here.
Final 30 seconds of round 9. Fortunately for Walker, this one is only scheduled for 10.
He has absorbed a lot of punishment in this bout. He might be close to going.
Oh, he says he slipped. He is very awkward. They're counting it as a knockdown.
An appropriate call. He was hit with a punch and his glove touched.
We come to the end of round 9 as Mike Clark piles up the points.
Here is where a knockdown was called against Walker. Now, as you look at it again, that punch did kind of cuff him, but it was a punch that knocked him down, and his glove did touch, so I'll stand by my original point that it was appropriate.
Round number 10 is underway, the 10th and final round. And Mike Clark, obviously comfortably ahead on the scorecards, I would think.
Won every round in my estimation. And in the last round, he outpunched Walker 36-7, according to our punch profile numbers. And that really is this bout in microcosm. That's about the way he's dominated the entire match.
And with the knockdown in round 9, that's good for 2 points. Back in round 6, I gave Clark a 2-point round, despite the fact that Walker had not gone down. So it's just a blitzkrieg.
Been dominant for Mike Clark.
And a timeout is called. Referee Dan Kelly checking the tape on the glove of Mike Clark. And the reason why they do this, you'd say, well, the guy's ahead, let's just finish the fight. But a stray piece of tape like that could get in the eye of the opposition.
Could easily injure the other boxer.
Thank you.
And Paul Walker doesn't need any new problems, does he? He's had enough in this match.
Well, with Walker plowing in like that, if I was Mike Clark, my big concern would be getting a cut now late in this fight.
Especially when he's on the brink, perhaps, of some important bouts in the next few months, as he hopes he will be. He wanted a chance to show the viewing public in America what he could do, and he has certainly shown that. Granted, Walker is a sub-500 boxer, but as we've pointed out, he's been in against some good people and given some pretty good fighters a few problems. So, and all Mike Clark can do, of course, is box as well as he can, no matter who's in front of him. And you can see he has lots of skills.
Well, he's nailed a A lot of right hands to the head of Walker, like there. There's another right hand.
Clark has been as long as 12 rounds in a bout against Alexis Perez a little over a year ago. So going this distance is not a problem for him, and it hasn't been a problem.
Final 35 seconds of this bout between Mike Clark and Lyndon Paul Walker. And Mike Clark will not get that 11th career knockout. No need to fret, I guess.
Not when you land over 60% of your punches.
Good performance by Mike Clark, and, well, Lyndon Paul Walker can take a shot, that's for sure. And that is it. The fight is over. Lyndon Paul Walker took a licking, kept on ticking, but Mike Clark will probably keep on winning. We'll have the decision, plus we'll bring you the IBF lightweight championship fight between Philip Holliday and Jeff Fennick, and don't forget Mark Breland and Buck Smith in our main event. All that coming up after this timeout. Our first fight.
Seen by our judges. Jim Humayan scored it 100-90. Randy Erickson had it 100-90. And Brad Wright had it 100-89 to the winner by unanimous decision. Still undefeated, Mike Clark from Crump Boxing Gym.
So a shutout on all three judges' cards. Mike Clark comes up with the victory. He improves to 18-0. A very impressive performance by Mike Clark out of Columbus, Ohio, as he defeats Paul Walker. Lyndon Paul Walker falls to 12-13. Let's toss it up to Al.
Well, thank you, Bob. Mike Clark with a very impressive performance. I'm sure you had to be happy with this. Your accuracy was astonishing. You landed over 60% of your punches.
Well, that's something that me and Emmanuel work on in the gym, and include Matt Bocciolini in Columbus, Ohio. We work on our quickness and trying to land punches more than just throwing them out the way.
Well, I'll tell you, it could have been frustrating, and has been for some people that fought Walker, to not be able to knock him out, but you stayed within your game.
Well, Walker was pretty heavy. I mean, I used to fight lightweights. This guy come in pretty big. Of course, he was bigger than me, but I managed to hit him with some good punches and hurt him real bad.
Let's take a look at the total punches, and as you look at it, you're going to impress yourself with these numbers, Mike, because they were very impressive. Look down at that. You landed, as I said, 60% of your shots.
Well, it's something, like I said, I've been working on in the gym, even in Columbus, Ohio. I was working on throwing punches and even landing them. So that's I don't want to throw punches and then miss the guy. I want to land them, hit him, probably be, ahead and scoring for us.
Let's talk a little bit about your future. You were a terrific amateur. You're undefeated as a pro. You're ready to take a step up now, aren't you?
Well, most definitely. I've been doing this for a long time, 3 years. I've been with Emmanuel Stewart for like 2 years. We're looking to fight guys like Ivan Robertson. Some of these lightweights quit ducking me. Go ahead and fight me. I'm just a little guy.
Okay. Well, you're a good little guy. Congratulations.
All right.
All right. So Mike Clark wants better fights. He should have that for sure. Let's go back to Bob Papa at ringside.